Ethan Cole was melting into the coffee shop's plush sofa, the kind that felt like it could swallow a manhole. His entire lower half, it seemed, had officially clocked out and gone home. He dug 2 fingers into the small of his back, trying to work out an ache so deep it felt like he'd been used as a battering ram by a herd of wild animals. "Dude," he said, his voice raspy. He stared at his friend, Leo, who had just sat down across from him. Ethan's eyes were so hollow, he looked like his soul had been vacuum-sealed and shipped to another dimension. "If this keeps up, I'm not going to make it." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Seriously, I think I'm headed for an early grade." Leo, who had just taken a sip of his latte, nearly sprayed it across the table. He set his cup down, giving Ethan a long, hard look. The guy's normally handsome face was shrouded in a fog of pure exhaustion, accented by a pair of dark circles that could rival pandas. "What happened to you? You're newlyweds. You look like you've been hauling concrete on a construction site. Or did your wife turn into a succubus and drain you dry?" "Drain me dry?" Ethan let out a bitter chuckle, the sound of a man who had survived a natural disaster. "Huh, that'd be getting off easy. My wife, she's not just draining me. She's trying to boil my bones for soup stock." His wife, Dr. Juliana Hayes. At Northwood University, especially in the advanced theoretical physics courses she taught, that name was enough to make grown graduate students weep. Her students had nicknames for her: the Ice Queen, or more bluntly, Dar Doom. In her class, you didn't skip, you didn't show up late, and if you had to sneeze, you felt like you needed to submit a formal request first, lest you attract the attention of her gaze, a gaze so cold it could freeze your soul solid. Her exams? They were legendarily impossible, a direct descent into academic hell that ensured her courses had the highest failure rate on campus, year after year. The student motto was, "Better to face a firing squad than fail a Hayes final." But who would have ever guessed, Ethan thought with a surge of indignant misery, that the second they closed their front door, this terrifying, cold-hearted goddess completely changed species. If any of her students saw her now, they'd assume she was possessed. "Honey," the memory of her voice, a breathy purr that could melt steel, echoed in his mind, wrapping around him like a velvet snare. "I'm hungry. Can you make me your special barbecue ribs?" And that was the good part. The real terror began at night, when she would sidle up to him, her eyes dark with a lazy, predatory hunger. Her warm breath would ghost across his ear, her voice a sweet, sticky whisper. "Darling, I learned some new knowledge while I was prepping for my lecture today. The literature suggests this technique is particularly effective. How about we run an experiment to validate the theory?" Before he got married, Ethan had been a legend in his own right, fit, toned, and brimming with confidence in his stamina. On their wedding night, he'd been cocky, thinking, "Just you wait, Professor. Let me show you how it's done." The result? There was no result. He had been utterly, comprehensively, and single-handedly dominated. For the last 2 weeks, 15 consecutive nights, Professor Hayes had applied her unquenchable thirst for knowledge to the practical sciences. Her dedication to bridging the gap between theory and practice was relentless. When her existing knowledge base was exhausted, she moved on to the terrifying phase of live data acquisition and real-time learning. Ethan felt like a test subject, a poor slab of material being hammered, wrung out, and experimented on. His once proud physical reserves had evaporated at a terrifying rate. The alarm bells from his back and legs were screaming louder each day. Now, sitting in the quiet coffee shop, he could feel that familiar, grinding ache start to pulse deep in his lower back, a cruel reminder of last night's extracurricular efforts. He picked up his bland Americano and chugged half of it, trying to drown the bone-deep fatigue. "God, what a nightmare," he sighed, setting the cup down with a clatter. "I can't take it anymore, Leo. My back. I feel like one wrong move, and it's going to snap in half and stage a hostile takeover of my spleen." Leo was trying not to laugh, his shoulders shaking. "Oh, give me a break. You're living the dream, and you don't even know it. You got the goddess of every guy's dreams at home, and you're complaining? This is the definition of a first-world problem, my friend." He dragged out the words, his face a perfect mask of poor you, with your super-hot, brilliant wife. Ethan rolled his eyes so hard he nearly strained a muscle. He was too tired to argue with someone who clearly couldn't comprehend his predicament. He needed his back, a plan forming in his weary mind. He needed reinforcements, a secret weapon, the primal core herbal tonic he'd seen advertised online. The old-school, potent stuff. He had to get some, sneak it past Juliana, and seriously recharge his batteries. Then, and only then, could he teach the professor a lesson of his own. A few days later, on a bright Saturday afternoon that felt just as dark as any other day to Ethan, he tiptoed into his house like a thief. He clutched a brown paper bag from a New Age health store, the kind of place that smelled like incense and vague promises. The bag, stamped with the holistic guru's ancient vitality formula, radiated a pungent, earthy aroma. The living room was empty. He breathed a sigh of relief, hunching over as he made a beeline for the kitchen, planning to stash the evidence in the darkest corner of the pantry. "Honey," a light, musical voice floated out from the study doorway, stopping him dead in his tracks. His body went rigid, the hand holding the bag frozen mid-air. He looked like a cartoon character who'd just had the pause button slammed on him. Slowly, stiffly, he turned his head. "I thought she was at the university. How'd you get back so fast?" He screamed internally. "This is bad." Juliana was leaning against the doorframe of the study, her gaze fixed on Ethan's comically guilty posture. At home, she wore a soft, cream-colored cashmere cardigan, her long hair pinned up loosely with a few strands framing her face. She looked soft, gentle, and utterly harmless, a far cry from the formidable figure she cut at a lectern. But her eyes, Ethan knew those eyes. Those slightly upturned, intelligent eyes were now glinting with a look of pure, unadulterated, all-knowing amusement. "Honey, you're back so soon? I thought you had that academic conference this afternoon," Ethan said, trying to divert her attention while subtly moving the bag behind his back. "It was canceled, so I came home," Juliana replied, her eyes locked on his fidgeting hands. "What's it you've got there?" A faint, knowing smile played on her lips as she pushed off the doorframe and began to walk toward him, her soft slippers making no sound on the hardwood floor. The scent of her perfume, a light floral mixed with the clean smell of old books, felt deeply menacing. Ethan instinctively tried to hide the bag further behind him, the sudden movement almost throwing out his fragile back. "And nothing. It's nothing. Just, some artisanal tea." His mind raced, desperately searching for a plausible explanation that didn't involve words like exhausted, sore back, or any other term that would wound his fragile male ego. Juliana was already standing in front of him. She took a delicate sniff of the air, and a look of dawning comprehension spread across her face. "Oh," she said, drawing the sound out with playful curiosity. "That smells very herbal." She reached out a slender finger and, with unerring accuracy, poked the paper bag he was trying to conceal. "Primal Core Tonic," she read from the label he hadn't noticed, was visible. She tilted her head, her big, expressive eyes blinking with a look of pure, angelic innocence, as if she were genuinely just asking about his dietary choices. "Honey, are you feeling a little, like you can't quite keep up the pace lately?" Boom. A tidal wave of hot blood rushed to Ethan's head. His manhood, his very honor, was facing its gravest challenge yet. "No, I can't admit it. If I admit it, it's over. How will I ever look her in the eye again? I'll lose what little power I have left in this relationship. Who can't keep up? What are you talking about?" Ethan's voice shot up several octaves, his neck muscles straining with a desperate, transparent bravado. "Juliana, I'm warning you, don't talk crazy. I'm fine. I'm great. Never been better. This tonic. I bought this. For you. Yeah, I saw how hard you've been working on your research, and I was worried about you. I wanted you to have it." The words tumbled out of him in a frantic rush, his face turning red with the effort. He glanced everywhere but at Juliana's eyes, which he was sure could see straight through his soul. Juliana didn't say a word. She just watched him, that little smile on her lips deepening into a look of pure, unadulterated amusement, as if to say, "Please continue. This is fascinating." The silence was excruciating. Ethan could feel sweat prickling on his back. Finally, she let out a soft and reached out. Before he could react, she plucked the heavy, "I'm so guilty it hurts" bag from his rigid fingers. "So thoughtful of you, honey," she cooed, turning and gliding toward the kitchen. "Well, in that case, let me be thoughtful too. I'll brew this for you myself. You just wait." Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came out. He wanted to protest, to snatch the bag back, but as he watched her slender but unyielding back disappear into the kitchen, his courage deserted him. "It's over," he thought with a wave of despair. He could already feel his back starting to throb again. Soon, noises drifted from the kitchen. The rush of the faucet, the soft clink of a ceramic pot on the stove, the rustle of herbs being poured. Before long, an incredibly complex, overwhelmingly pungent odor began to waft out. The smell was a biochemical assault, conquering the living room and seeping insidiously toward the bedroom. Ethan sat on the sofa, feeling like he was perched on a bed of nails. The smell was inescapable, drilling into his sinuses, making his head spin and his stomach churn. This wasn't a health tonic. It was a prelude to some new form of torture. After what felt like an eternity, Juliana emerged, carrying a white porcelain bowl. Inside was a thick, nearly black liquid, steaming ominously. The soul-crushing aroma had reached its peak. She wore a gentle, benevolent smile, approaching him as if she were carrying the nectar of the gods. "Here you go, honey. Drink it while it's hot. It's most effective that way." She held the bowl right under his nose. The combined stench of earth, bitter herbs, and that unidentifiable funk hit him like a physical blow. His stomach lurched, and a wave of pure, primal revulsion washed over him. He shot up from the sofa, the sudden movement yanking at his sore back, making him wince in pain. "No, I'm not drinking that. You can kill me, but I'm not drinking it." Ethan clutched his nose, stumbling backward until his back hit the cold wall. His face was a mask of tragic, defiant horror. "Get away from me. Juliana, I'm telling you, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. You're not going to disrespect me like this." Juliana stood her ground, holding the bowl. She watched his cornered animal act with a cool, detached amusement. She wasn't angry, nor was she trying to force him. She just raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her gaze flickering from his face back down to the terrifying black liquid. "Honey, for your own good, and for the sake of our marital bliss, you should really listen to me." A few seconds of suffocating silence passed. Then, to Ethan's horror, Juliana's lips slowly curved into a devastatingly beautiful, yet utterly dangerous smile. A sly, predatory light flashed in her eyes. She lowered her head to the bowl, her full, red lips parting slightly as she took a small sip of the black concoction. Ethan's eyes widened, his brain short-circuiting. He had no idea what she was planning. Was she going to drink it herself? No, that couldn't be it. The next second, she moved. Holding the bowl, she advanced on him, her hips swaying with an undeniable, unstoppable momentum. Step by step, she closed the distance. Ethan was trapped, his back pressed flat against the wall. Juliana rose onto her toes. With her free hand, she reached out, her soft fingers curling around the back of his neck with a gentle but irresistible force, pulling his head down. Their eyes met. Hers were shimmering, dewy, like a deep pool veiled in mist, beckoning him to fall in. Her lips, now glistening from the tonic, looked fuller, richer. Then, she tilted her head up, and her lips, warm, soft, and tasting strangely of bitter herbs, pressed against his, which were parted in shock. MMPH! A sonic boom went off in Ethan's brain. The bitter, foul, and searingly hot liquid, mixed with Juliana's uniquely sweet scent, was forcefully transferred into his mouth. He tried to resist, but her tongue seemed to expertly guide the flow, and before he knew it, he had swallowed the damn thing. An indescribable, horrifically complex flavor exploded in his mouth and throat. Juliana pulled back slightly, a dark, suspicious trace of the liquid still lingering on the corner of her mouth. She looked at Ethan, who was now coughing, his face scrunched up in disgust, looking like his soul had just been evicted from his body. She licked a tiny droplet from her lips, her eyes glinting with a satisfied, foxy sparkle. Her voice was a low, seductive purr, each word a feather-light touch on his frayed nerves. "So, this imported tonic should do the trick, right? The taste, so much better this way, don't you think?" Ethan coughed until tears streamed from his eyes, the ghastly flavor still waging war in his mouth. He looked at the beautiful, smiling, demonic face so close to his, and a wave of pure fury shot through him. It's over. It was a trap. She knew. This woman, she did this on purpose. She knew his pride wouldn't let him admit the truth, and she knew he wouldn't be able to resist this move. This wasn't just feeding a medicine. This was the opening act for a whole new round of knowledge exchange. This was a death sentence. "Be a good boy. Honey, let's keep going. You need to finish all your medicine," Juliana murmured. She took another large sip and lunged for his mouth again. After a 30-second kiss that felt more like a hostage situation, the second dose was down. Strangely, the bitter medicine didn't seem quite so awful this time, tempered as it was with the sweetness of Juliana herself. Then, Juliana casually placed a half-empty bowl of poison on a nearby end table. Like she had no bones in her body, she pressed herself against him again, her soft arms wrapping around his waist. "MMM." She sighed contentedly, nuzzling his neck, her breath warm against his skin. "See? Instant results. Your back doesn't feel so stiff anymore, does it, honey?" Ethan froze. He could feel the imported tonic he'd been force-fed instantly combust into a volatile fire that shot straight down to his core. A single thought echoed in his brain. This is the end. The battle raged from the afternoon until deep into the night. Past midnight, the house was silent. Ethan, clinging to the wall for support, shuffled into the living room like a shell-shocked soldier retreating from the front lines. His back was no longer his own, his legs were trembling, and his spirit felt like it was about to float right out of the top of his head. The living room was dark, save for the faint glow of a streetlight outside. He fumbled for his phone, which had been tossed onto the sofa, his fingers shaking. He opened iMessage, found Leo pinned at the top, and held down a microphone icon. Using the last ounce of his strength, his voice a ragged, breathless whisper, he vented his soul-deep misery. Leo, I'm telling you, this woman, she's doing it on purpose. She's a demon, a juicer in a professor's body. I'm being dismantled. I can hear my bones creaking. God, what did I do to deserve this? Not 10 seconds after he sent it, his phone screen lit up. A reply from Leo. Not text. Another voice message. Ethan's trembling finger tapped the play button. Leo's voice, sharp, loud, and dripping with a potent cocktail of disbelief, envy, and contempt, blasted from the speaker. Are you insane, Ethan? It's the middle of the night. I don't believe a word you're saying. Keep pretending. Just keep humble bragging, you ass. You're getting pampered and nursed back to health by a goddess. And you're over here, crying like a baby? Have some shame. If you want to show off, just say it. Another voice message arrived immediately after. You hit the jackpot with a wife like that, dude. Most of us can only dream. So shut up and enjoy it. Screw you. Ethan roared at the phone with all his might, his voice cracking. His hand went limp, and the phone fell with a soft thud onto the thick rug. He slid down the side of the sofa onto the cool floor, staring blankly at the ceiling in utter despair. From the other end of the living room, the master bedroom door was ajar, a warm sliver of light spilling out. He could faintly hear Juliana inside, humming a cheerful little tune. She wasn't just fine, she was in high spirits. The door swung open, and Juliana emerged, her face flushed and glowing. She smiled at her husband. Honey, what are you doing on the floor? After all that exercise, you need a shower. Tell you what, I'll help you wash up. It's over. Ethan thought, his heart sinking into a pit of blackest despair. This life, it was an endless tunnel of darkness. His back, his kidneys, his pathetic shred of dignity. All of it was held captive in the hands of that beautiful demon. And in that demon study drawer, he remembered with a jolt of horror, there was another book, a new one he glimpsed with a flashy cover. Intimate Mechanics, Exploration and Practice. Ahem, honey, I can wash myself. You must be tired too. You should go get a shower. Ethan said, his voice weak with dread. Oh, don't be silly. You're the one who's exhausted. It's my duty to take good care of you. Come on, we'll shower together. Before he could protest, Juliana was by his side, pulling him up by the arm and half carrying his stumbling form into the bathroom. Clearly, she wasn't finished. In the shower, a whole new sporting event commenced, accompanied by Ethan's muffled cries of surrender. It was 3 a.m. by the time they were done. Ethan lay on the bed, dead to the world. Beside him, Juliana snuggled into his arms, a look of blissful contentment on her face. The next day, Ethan didn't wake up until noon. He felt as if he'd been run over by a semi-truck, repeatedly. Every bone and joint in his body screamed in protest. He managed to pry open his eyelids, which felt like they'd been sealed with superglue. The sunlight stabbing through the window sent a jolt of pain through his skull. The space next to him was empty. The sheets were cool, but he could still smell Juliana's faint, floral scent mixed with the crisp smell of books. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Something's wrong. The woman's energy level was inhuman. After their epic knowledge marathon that had started yesterday afternoon and ended at 3 a.m., a battle that had nearly claimed his life in the shower. How could she possibly have the energy to be up and about? A deep sense of foreboding settled heavily on his ravaged lower back. Holding his breath, he ignored the symphony of pain from his body and slipped out of bed like a spy infiltrating an enemy compound. The moment his feet touched the floor, that familiar, grinding ache in his back flared up, so sharp he almost collapsed. Clinging to the wall, he shuffled to the bedroom door. He peered around the frame, his eyes scanning the living room like a periscope. The living room was quiet. The kitchen was still. Ethan's heart settled slightly, only to leap back into his throat a second later. The door to the study was cracked open just a sliver. His scalp tingled. Tiptoeing, holding his breath, Ethan hugged the wall and painstakingly shuffled his way to the study door. He pressed his eye to the crack and peered inside. His heart stopped. Juliana was in there. Of course she was. She was wearing the same soft, cream-colored cashmere cardigan from last night, her hair loosely pinned up, a few stray strands gracing the nape of her neck. Bathed in the warm glow of her desk lamp, her profile was soft, serene. She was the very picture of domestic tranquility, except for the book in her hands. That book. That damn book. Ethan's eyes nearly bulged out of his skull. The garish, brightly colored, and deeply suggestive cover was one he would recognize even if he were reduced to ash. Advanced Intimate Dynamics, the Synergy Protocol. It was thicker than the last one, and flashier. The subtitle, printed in a flowing script, Unlocking Your Partner's Full Potential, made his vision go black at the edges. Even worse, Juliana was holding a pen. Her head was bent slightly, her expression as focused as if she were reviewing a groundbreaking academic paper. Every so often, she would tap the tip of the pen on the page of the evil text, making a soft, scratching sound. To Ethan, that sound was more terrifying than the Grim Reaper flipping through his ledger. His legs began to cramp. A wave of icy dread shot up from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. It's over, it's over, it's over. She's at it again. She's prepping for her lecture. The last introductory textbook had nearly wrung him out like a dish rag. This advanced version, was she planning to grind his bones into dust and drink it with her morning coffee? At this rate, not even a daily 4-drip of that primal core tonic could save him. Alarm bells screamed his head. His body reacted before his brain could, and he instinctively tried to pull back to pretend he'd never seen a thing. But it was too late. The hand he was using to brace himself against the doorframe was clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. The tiny sound of his joints cracking echoed like a thunderclap in the silent room. Juliana's pen stopped moving. As if she'd sensed him, she slowly, deliberately lifted her head. Her gaze locked precisely onto Ethan's, catching his wide, terrified face peeking through the crack in the door. Their eyes met. For half a second, the air solidified. Then, the corners of Juliana's mouth began to curve upward, bit by bit. The resulting smile, bathed in the warm lamplight, was breathtakingly beautiful, and it made every hair on Ethan's body stand at full attention. Honey. Her voice was still husky with sleep, soft and sweet, like a honey-coated hook. You're awake. Ethan flinched, his hand nearly slipping off the doorframe. His throat was bone dry. He swallowed hard, his own voice cracking. Yeah. Awake. You're up early, honey. Heh. Head. His laugh sounded more like a choke. Juliana ignored his pathetic attempt at small talk. Her gaze drifted back down to the colorful textbook in her hands. Her long, elegant fingers stroked the cover with a lazy grace, almost caressing it. Her fingertip paused deliberately on the bold, gold-foiled words, Advanced Intimate Dynamics. Ethan's eyes were glued to that single, evil finger, feeling his own heart spasm with every tiny movement. Juliana finally said, looking up at him again. Her eyes were sparkling like a sun-drenched spring, her smile radiant. She sounded as casual as if she were discussing what to have for breakfast. Did you sleep well? It's the weekend, you know. She paused, tapping the book with her fingernail. The light tap sounded like a hammer blow against Ethan's taut nerves. Perfect timing. Her voice grew softer, laced with a sweet, dangerous temptation. This new material just arrived. It looks so much more interesting than that old exploration and practice manual. She tilted her head, her eyes shining with that terrifying, familiar light, a potent mix of intellectual curiosity, a thirst for discovery, and a heavy dose of sheer cunning. The knowledge points are much more condensed, and it seems to be far more. Hands-on. Boom. The last thread of Ethan's sanity snapped. More hands-on. An image flashed in his mind. Himself, strapped to a lab table, while Juliana, using this advanced manual as a guide, ran a series of horrifying, validating experiments on him. His kidneys began to ache in phantom sympathy. A massive, overwhelming survival instinct surged through him, trampling over all notions of pride, dignity, and back pain. Honey. Ethan's voice was thick with unshed tears. Forgetting his near paralysis, he practically threw himself into the doorway, clasping his hands together and bowing in her direction, his arms wrapping tightly around her long, beautiful legs. Look, it's the weekend. Such a beautiful day. The sun is shining. The birds are singing. He was babbling, his eyes darting around wildly, searching for any possible escape route. Let's research something else, huh? Anything else? Sweat beaded on his forehead as he thrashed about like a drowning man. How about we research the stock market? The Dow Jones. So much potential for study. Or we could analyze geopolitical tensions. The situation in the Middle East is super complex. That'd keep us busy for a while. Or Or we could go research that new fried chicken place that opened down the street. I hear their fries are extra crispy. That has incredible research value. He was talking faster and faster, his suggestions growing more absurd, until he was practically shouting. If all else fails, we can research how to perform CPR on that dying cactus on the balcony. Honey, I'm begging you. Juliana was thoroughly amused by his incoherent, desperate list of alternative research topics. She put down her pen, leaned back in her chair, and folded her hands over advanced intimate dynamics, watching her husband's spectacular survival instinct-fueled performance. She didn't speak. She just narrowed her beautiful eyes, a deeply meaningful, knowing smile playing on her lips. Her look said it all. Oh, you're adorable. Keep going. The only sound in the study was Ethan's ragged breathing. He stared at Juliana, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was a fish on the chopping block, waiting for the final verdict. At last, Juliana moved. She brought her index finger to her chin, tapping it thoughtfully as if giving his suggestions serious consideration. She purred, her gaze sweeping over Ethan's pale, desperate face before landing back on his pleading eyes. She spoke slowly, deliberately. All these research proposals you've brought to me, honey. Ethan's heart leaped into his throat. They sound. Juliana paused, watching the hope flare in his eyes before her full, red lips parted to deliver the final two words. Incredibly boring. The light in Ethan's eyes winked out. He sagged against the doorframe, all the fight draining out of him, looking like a deflated balloon. However, Juliana's tone shifted, and she watched him tense up again, the amusement in her eyes deepening. She stood, gracefully circling her desk, and began walking toward him, each step radiating that familiar pressure that made his scalp prickle. Ethan wanted to retreat, but his legs felt like they were cast in lead. Juliana stopped right in front of him. The soft light outlined her perfect silhouette. She tilted her head up, so close he could smell the lovely scent of her skin and see the playful, predatory glint in her eyes. She reached out with one soft finger and poked him in the center of his tense chest. Her voice was a feathery whisper, a playful caress that landed like a sledgehammer on his soul. You're right, honey. It is the weekend, and the sun is just lovely. So how about we research a new recipe? I'll just learn a new one. I'll make you my special dish. Ethan felt a flicker of relief, but it was extinguished in an instant. A special dish? Was this a normal dish? Juliana smiled, her finger tracing a slow, deliberate path down his chest, heading directly for his tormented lower back. Her fingertip finally landed on its target and pressed, not too hard, not too soft. Arg! A yelp of pure, electrified agony escaped Ethan's lips. He nearly jumped out of his skin, the exquisite pain in his back shooting straight to his brain. Today, honey, is perfect, Juliana murmured, completely ignoring his cry of pain. Her smile was as sweet as ever, and her fingertip began tracing little, evil circles on the sore spot. For conducting some sun-drenched outdoor knowledge verification, she leaned in closer, her warm breath ghosting across his ear, her voice a syrupy, seductive whisper. The book says that natural light can have a significant and positive effect on certain physiological responses. It's a hypothesis that really deserves some in-depth, practical exploration. Don't you agree, honey? Ethan. Agree? Agree with what? He stared at her face, so beautiful it broke your heart, yet whispering words of pure, demonic intent. He felt the soul-crushing pressure on his back and was consumed by a tsunami of grief and despair. Sunlight? Outdoors? Verification? This is the end. He could already see it. Himself, laid out on a lounge chair on the balcony like a piece of salted fish left to dry, while the ever-curious Professor Hayes, armed with her copy of Advanced Intimate Dynamics, conducted a series of comparative studies on light-enhanced reactions in broad, unforgiving daylight. This life was a tunnel of pure, unending darkness. His back, his kidneys, his last shred of human dignity. All of it was in the hands of the Ice Queen, and it was all about to be subjected to a rigorous new round of testing under the bright, cruel sun. Ethan closed his eyes in utter desolation. Today's sun felt particularly bright, particularly glaring, and particularly malicious.